Can I go ahead?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So I'm Greg. I've already introduced myself twice. My email address is up there, and also my GeoGebra handle, in case you want. I've got some worksheets up that you have to do with this talk. It's SLEJHAMR sledgehammer. If you ask me again, I'll repeat it. So probably some of you have taught or teach calculus, and then calculus, even in geometry, maybe pre-calculus, you may encounter students who have trouble visualizing things in 3 dimensions. And also, when students have trouble understanding something, they can become distracted and not learn anything or retain much. And I think that GeoGebra has great potential to help students, whether it can be used by instructors to make great visual aids, and also for hands-on activities by students. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'll list some merits of GeoGebra. We all know it's free. It's partly or mostly open source. I don't really understand all that, but that's an advantage. It has great 3D graphics and 2D graphics, including a built-in stereo view option. If you have green-red glasses, if you get some green-red glasses, you can order them for $1 off Amazon. There's literally just a tick box in view. You just click 3D, and there you go. You don't have to code the 3D stuff. And it works really well. I've used it. Oops, sorry. Okay, it's highly interactive. It's really easy to rotate, zoom, and shift things in 3D. You can have buttons, sliders, input boxes. And also, a big plus is it's easy for us to post interactive worksheets on the web where anybody can use them. And I don't think there are many computer algebra systems where you could do that. So you get like free web hosting on top of all the other benefits. And students can, I think it's amazing, maybe because of my age, that anybody with a web browser can use one of these. They don't even need to have an account, let alone need to install software. Now there are other CASs that have 1 or 2 of these features, but GeoGebra might be unique in combining all of them. And for a long time, I've used other computer algebra systems, and sometimes like maybe Excel, which doesn't really qualify to teach calculus and some other classes. But they didn't use it themselves because I don't teach coding, and if I tried to teach coding, the students would resist, and I would get in trouble because I'm not supposed to teach. I'm not supposed to require my students to code. But I discovered GeoGebra about 2 years ago, and it seemed ideal for hands-on work because students can use it without knowing how to code or needing to code. On the other hand, if students are interested in coding, then they can use that as a GeoGebra can help ease them into that, like Sam talked about Python. Okay. So I decided to create a hands-on GeoGebra assignment that with the following features to be graded, so students would do it, because often students don't do something unless it's graded. Promote work in small teams. Oh, sorry. Involve some class time work, so students would do something participatory in class instead of just listen to me. Okay. So this is what I did the following experiment. I had students form themselves into groups of 3 or 4, and each one of them was provided a formula of this form. The integrand isn't really important, the function in there. In fact, I think it just said f of x, y, z. But I gave them specific numbers for a and b, and functions of x there, and functions of x and y in the inside. And I also gave them a worksheet that plotted the corresponding solid of integration. Let me show you that. Okay, there it is. So I just gave this to them so that they would know what the solid looked like. And of course, they can rotate it around and look at it from all angles. GeoGebra really excels at this plotting because you can make these are parametric surfaces. Right now they're all flat, but they could have been curved. That's real easy. I can pick any numbers I want there and any functions of x I want. Make that a little more interesting, but not too interesting. Okay. Just want to make one of the functions nonlinear. So you get the idea. So this way the students would know what that solid looked like. Oh, by the way, you can personalize your worksheets. So if somebody borrowed, your students will know that you wrote it and nobody else did. It's always nice because sometimes students just assume that you got it from a publisher or somebody else. So I gave them the limits of integration and this worksheet. Back. So that's just one order of integration, of course. Now, if the shape is simple enough, then there's 5 other possible orders. And what the students had to do is they had to find the limits of integration for the other 5 orders. And I sent them 5 GeoGebra worksheets that would plot the solids using the other orders of integration. What they had to do is set those limits of integration so that they match the solid they were given and submit working GeoGebra worksheets to me. Now, what's so funny?
You're just
Okay. Well, I was doing this for the first time, so.
You never know how long it's going to take that.
I honestly didn't know.
Especially the first time.
So let me show you some of the other ones. So for example, this is the YXZ order. I'm sorry, wait a minute, that's mislabeled. Okay, yeah, this has Z on the outside, X in the middle, and Y on the inside. So I can type in the values of Z, the functions of Z, and then functions of X and Z on the inside. want to show you, gotta show you something. I thought I had it pulled up already. Okay, the files I gave them actually look more like this. I put the word unpolished in the title. They had some implementation details on the side that kind of confused the students. And I told them what they had to change and the things to ignore. So all they had to change was the limits of integration and those functions of z and of y. Now, I had some trouble when I was writing them, and I suspected that maybe y and x and z had some special significance in GeoGebra. I'm still not certain to this day. So they do?
Y and Z, yeah.
Okay, so see these functions, they're arguments, I call them double z and triple y and triple z to try to get around that problem, and it fixed the problem. But that confused the students, because the students, they're supposed to know something about programming, because it had a MATLAB class, but apparently it didn't stick that well, and they didn't really understand what an argument of a function is. So they didn't understand that this this could have been banana, as long as there was banana on the right. And this could have been apple, comma, prune, as long as there were prune on the right. They didn't get it. They say, well, why is it ZZ? So when I did this again in the fall, and I made a more polished version with these fancy input boxes, which took me, of course, a long time to make, because I was doing it for the first time. But getting back to okay. So how did the students react to this? Very positively. What I did is I gave students 25 minutes in class to work on it, and then another 25-minute period in class later. They also worked on it outside of class, I believe. And when I observed them in class, almost all of them worked enthusiastically on it and talked to each other, and they asked me questions. I saw a student experience a genuine aha moment right in front of me, which is rare, at least in my experience. And almost every team submitted the quiz within the generous time period I gave them, and the results were almost perfect.
May I ask, what was the aha moment?
What?
What was the aha moment?
Well, it really had to do with how do I find these, what do these functions mean? I think it was like these, well, maybe it was these, like this is the bottom surface, this is the top surface, like translating something into a math idea into some more common sense. I don't remember exactly.
It doesn't really mean much when you just look at it.
Yeah.
But when you put it with, you can see the relationship, right?
What?
You can see the relationship between what the formula or the integration and the physical.
Yeah. So this is the kind of problem that I found Calculus 3 students have a lot of trouble with. You have a three-dimensional shape and you try to and you want to integrate a function over it, and you have to set up a triple nested integral, and the major challenge is in finding these limits of integration, because you have to find the equations of surfaces. Well, I attempted to be kind of scientific about this, so I had taught the same class in spring, the previous semester. I used them as a control group, and they hadn't used GeoGebra themselves. And I gave them a one-question survey at the end of the semester. Said this course increased my ability to visualize 3D objects. And the result, there was a slight improvement. which is kind of disappointing, honestly. But I also compared their performance on an exam question, very similar exam question, and I compared how they did in percent in that on that exam question. And the improvement was, I think, significant enough that it showed a genuine improvement.
How many students did you have?
I think I gave the survey to like 40 people in the spring and about 60 in the fall. I'm sorry for not having that data. Okay. So, so I decided to do something similar in the fall of 2023. But I did made a couple changes. One thing was smaller teams, because the assignment was pretty easy, and teams of 3 were really big enough. And I'd already put in the work of writing all these, all different assignments for like a couple dozen teams, so I was able to build on that work. Another difference is I had created more polished worksheets that had input boxes instead of the implementation details, which could have been confusing and required instructions so the students would know what to ignore. Also, the final difference is that I didn't require the teams to submit GeoGebra worksheets. They just had to write the limits of integration on paper. And what I wanted them to do was when they found their limits of integration, they would just type them into these extremely easy to use worksheets that I made for them. And then they could just look at the plots and see if they look like what they're supposed to look like. And just like in the spring, I gave them 2 sessions in class, about 20 minutes apiece to work on their stuff. And this is what happened. It didn't go very well. Because as often happens, if students are not required to do something, it often means that they don't do it, no matter how easy it is. So the in-class sessions were less productive. A lot of students were chatting, and the quizzes that were submitted that had the limits of integration on them, a lot of the limits of integration were just plain wrong. And if the students had bothered to type them into the GeoGebra worksheets, they would have seen that they were wrong. So my mistake was in not insisting the students, not requiring them to submit to prove that they used GeoGebra. Now, one way to do that would have been by using screenshots, which Levo mentioned. And I probably should have done that because in the spring, I used having them upload actual worksheets, and then me running the worksheets takes a lot of time. And in one case, it didn't work, even though it was valid, and the student had to come to my office and we had to check it. But a screenshot, I think, is pretty good proof. I don't think any students are going to forge screenshots. So next time I'll
You're being very generous.
I think it'd be easier just. Well, the screenshot would have to have like the correct. So I think it'd be easier to actually do it than to forge the screenshot. But
Excuse me, they were working on a team was working on one computer, the same computer, or each of them had in the team their own computers?
I think each of them had their own. I told them to bring laptops or tablet to class, and most of them did. Like maybe 2/3 of them brought them, and then others like looked over their partner's shoulders.
You can also make a GeoGebra classroom, put them in it, then you can see that they did it.
What?
GeoGebra classroom?
Yeah, I could have tried that. but I need to do some research about privacy concerns, because
It's in there.
it is?
Yeah, like you can make it, or you can email Monique, and she'll get you in touch with somebody who can,
Yeah, I'd have to clear
Sign
with our
anything.
IT people and cover my,
yeah,
you know,
they'll sign all this stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to fit it down, yeah.
So overall, it was I think it was a positive experiment that reinforced my belief that GeoGebra can be a great learning tool, particularly with 3D visualization and group work. But I learned that its use has to be made mandatory, no matter how easy it is, even if it doesn't require any coding. And I have some ways I have for the future are giving a couple such activities in a semester rather than one, and also using either my class's learning management system and or Google Classroom to make it easier for me to collect work and also for students to collaborate. Because some of the ways I did it were clumsy. The first time I actually had emailing files back and forth, which was just as inconvenient as you think. And so I learned my lesson. I did that better the second semester, but the second time I tried it, I made the mistake of not making it mandatory. Oops. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference for this very good free conference, and the other speakers for their informative talks, and also Embry-Riddle's CTLE, in particular Dr. Tia Cooks, who was a lot of help in this project. So, what questions do you have?
So one of my questions was how big are your classes?
I think maybe 35 a piece, 35 to a section.
Wow, taking back to the street? Really? That's a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there was no major, there was not a.
Yeah, almost all of them are engineering majors. So they're really tech savvy. They're pretty good at math, but they're not passionate. They don't want to learn math for its own sake. And the students were very good at using the technology. They just picked it up like that. They didn't have, except for the thing with not understanding how how a function worked. You define a function, you called it the input XXX. It doesn't differ. It doesn't signify anything different.
Did you have any student, because you said they have a aha moment, did you have any student who said, I would like to try myself after seeing this, out of this 40, 60 students?
No, I didn't have any students tell me, boy, this is terrific, I really want to do more myself. But I did have some students who had used GeoGebra themselves in high school, who already do some of it.
It's a good self-check tool. I use it when I took calculating to test work, just to see like same thing you're doing, except for I knew how to use GeoGebra, so I would do what the kids didn't. Like I would know, okay, I can test this limited integration. So cool.
They probably use some kind of, for homework, if they truly probably use some check or something. A lot of students are using the software to solve problems for them.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And that requires a little bit more, because they have
They
to
can't
understand.
cheat on it. Yeah.
Well, they can
Yeah.
cheat
Well, they
on it.
can.
So for me, this is the tool, it's for make them understand and not only repeat the steps. Yes? Because you have to understand what are the limits, what is function. Yes? So it would be good, I feel extra one. No more.
Extra credit, yeah.
Oh yeah, I love extra credit.